Your phone is more powerful than you think. People have been using smartphones now for over a decade. Think about what we use our phones for now versus how we used them in 2011. How much has changed? For the most part, most people use their phones to browse the web, communicate with family and friends, use social media apps, take photos, and play an occasional game. This was the case in 2011 and is still the case today. Yet, while our habits have largely remained the same, technology is ever advancing and does not rest on its laurels. As the smartphone has become an everyday item for everyone, a paradox has arisen. Companies are always trying to iterate and introduce new features to make their phones more appealing, but people are not leveraging these capabilities. Because they have been locked into defining what a phone is, the idea of it doing more seems odd to many people. The reality is that the modern smartphone is many things beyond simply a phone. A reality that more people should take notice of. The secret weapon that is desktop mode. Every year when the new batch of phones is released, they will all have an improved CPU powering them. It is like clockwork that with each phone release there will be a 10-15% performance bump advertised by the chip maker. These continued improvements will lead to more capabilities being possible despite people continuing to use phones the same way over the years. One of these improvements that often goes unnoticed is the proliferation of mobile desktop modes. If you have purchased a Samsung Galaxy S or Note phone within the last few years, chances are you have had a powerful feature that you have never taken advantage of. This feature is called Samsung DeX, Samsung's desktop environment for its phones. The way it works is that by connecting the phone to a monitor and other peripherals, a full-screen desktop environment is launched, allowing for true multitasking between apps and a productivity experience that adds a whole new layer of functionality to our pocket computers. After all, they are indeed pocket computers. Most people these days are using their smartphones as their primary source of computing power. This reality is part of the reason why having a phone with a desktop mode makes so much sense. The ability to edit a document or spreadsheet on the fly by simply connecting to a couple of accessories creates a solution without the need for a full-fledged laptop or desktop device. And Samsung is not the only manufacturer that has bought into this idea, as Motorola, LG, and Huawei have all implemented these types of solutions for their customers. However, the sad truth about desktop modes is that there is a very large, yeah but who cares, factor to this utility by many in the tech community. A very blasé attitude to the idea of a desktop browsing experience powered by a smartphone. This is because so many of us are in the thought pattern of a phone merely being a phone, not the pocket computer that it is. As someone that uses a Chromebook as a primary computing solution, much of that functionality that has made Chromebooks and Chrome OS so popular can be achieved by an Android phone with desktop mode. It is the added utility of multitasking from a phone that shows the progress of mobile phones, where even tasks such as video and photo editing can be done with a fair deal of proficiency on a modern smartphone. Tasks that have long been thought of as specifically for desktop operating systems such as macOS and Windows can now be achieved on a mobile device. This is a capability that needs to be emphasized more but is often overlooked as a gimmick rather than a utility. What's in an image? A phone that I often think about a lot more than I should is the Samsung Galaxy S4 Zoom. This phone was a regular Galaxy S4 with a digital camera slapped on the back. It was a ridiculous looking device, but the aim was simple, for the smartphone to replace the point and shoot camera. Fast forward to today, and phones have tools comparable to some DSLR cameras. These tools are daunting but very powerful, and yet most people dismiss these capabilities and do not use them. Most Android phones outside of the ones made by Google have some sort of manual camera or professional mode built in. Tools such as white balance, ISO, saturation, and contrast tweaking are all now present on smartphones. Sony went a step further on its phones in recent years to mimic the experience found on its alpha cameras on its Xperia line of phones. The photos that can be executed with these tools and mobile photo editors defies the imagination of what was thought to be possible merely a few years ago. Yet again, the conversation has been that of asking why anyone would want this sort of power on a mobile device. The answer is simple: as the main computer and internet device that people use, having this capability should be something that we should want. Instead, there is a stigma of complexity about using these modes. A worry that they are too difficult to master for the average consumer. It is this concern and assumption of ignorance that has pushed forward the idea that point and shoot is the only way to shoot photos and video on a phone. Part of this again falls on the manufacturers, as they have quite often paraded the one-touch magic of the automatic modes on cameras. This has been successful for Pixel and iPhone cameras to be deemed good cameras but has caused criticism for cameras from Samsung, OnePlus, and Sony. The solution to this is that the narrative around how we take photos on our phones requires nuance. That there are solutions for those who want control and solutions for people seeking a quick shot result. One does not need to be considered bad while the other is good. We can have it both ways. Redefining the use case. For years, the paradigm of what we think a phone can do has been limited by the idea of what a phone was a decade ago: merely a communication device. The means of communication have shifted from phone calls and text messages to video calls and social media interactions, but the idea is still the same. The mere suggestion of doing anything beyond that surface level usage is often written off as being too difficult. Things like high-end gaming, video editing, audio editing, and photo editing are all things that can be executed efficiently from a phone these days. But because it is not something that companies market and influencers do not talk about, it may be assumed that people will never use these features. The problem is one of awareness, where tech enthusiasts need to have these conversations to show what is possible. For far too long, those of us that are interested in new tech and gadgets have occupied a sort of isolated existence. One where we all thought it best to stay in our little bubble. While this can help to create a sense of community, the side effect is that these gadgets that we adore so much start to feel unapproachable beyond the bare essentials. A situation where mentioning how using lightweight Adobe apps to enhance photos feels like overkill as opposed to capability. The way that this can be remedied is through the normalization of doing these tasks on a mobile device. There are 3 ways that this is achieved. The first is to have us as tech enthusiasts explain these capabilities to our families and friends. The second is to have showcases from manufacturers on what is possible. Every major phone maker has a presence on YouTube. This platform can be leveraged to offer demonstrations of how to get the best experience from their device. For instance, Google showing how to use Google Photos or Snapseed to make the most of photos from the Pixel, or Apple showing how to properly leverage the built-in editing tools on the iPhone. The last hurdle to awareness is for tech reviewers and influencers to showcase these capabilities in their commentary as opposed to simply showcasing the home screen UI and a few camera samples. In the end, humans are creatures of habit.